Hi everyone, so I'm here today to walk you through how I made the first 2 cards in the Femme Fatale video I posted a couple of weeks ago. For the first card, we're going to take our solid heart die, and it's any die that basically will match the lacy die that's included in the Hero Arts kit. I'm using the Infinity dies by Hero Arts to get the proper match. And we're going to cut out 6 hearts from those. 4 of them are going to be the color that you want your lady's outfit to be, and then the other 2 you should cut out of white paper so that we can color it in a flesh tone for the legs. Here I'm also showing that if you have the Spellbinder's heart die, that would also work. It's about the same size as the Hero Arts die, and it has a solid die and a lacy die, so you can get the same effect. The first step after you have all of your pieces die cut is to color in the legs. And you can use any flesh tones that you normally use. Here I'm using E00, E21, and E11. And first I'm just going to cover the entire heart with E00 and then go over it with the darker colors until I get a nice uniform color across the heart. Here I'm just taking my ruler and an E11 marker just to kind of draw in the legs, and then I'm going to go over the rest of the heart with a darker marker just to kind of even out the skin tone and leave a little bit of a highlight on the thigh area. Alright, so we're almost done, and this is looking pretty good to me at this point. So now I'm just going to move on to the back of the legs and do the exact same thing. Now it's time to move on to assembling the bodice. So we're going to take the lacy heart and place it on top of one of the turquoise colored hearts to make the lacy top. Now we're going to grab another turquoise heart for the hips, and we're going to combine the top and the bottom and pierce it where we want to put the brad ultimately. And this is going to be the part that kind of shakes back and forth. Then we're going to take the solid heart die again and line it up so that we can do the leg cutout. And basically just line it up just like I'm doing on screen now, and then I'm going to secure it with some post-it tape and run it through the die cutting machine. Okay, so now we've run it through the die cutting machine and we have our little hole cut out. Now it's time to add the flesh colored part of the leg, and we're just going to line it up so that it matches, the edges match perfectly, and then we're going to adhere it to the bottom of the heart, just like I'm doing on screen. And now we're going to flip over our piece, and we're going to add the back of the legs just by matching up the front of the legs with the back of the legs, just like I'm doing there. Then we're going to flip it over again and basically add on the little hiney, I guess that's what you call it, and just basically match up the hips, the front of the hips with the back of them, and then that'll give you perfect placement. And then just again pierce all the pieces again, just so that when you are ready to put in the brad, it's easier. Now comes for the fun part. We're going to draw in the thigh highs, and I'm using a 0.1 Copic multi-liner for this. It's a very, very thin black tip pen. And to draw in the thigh highs, you just want to kind of draw the tops of them at a little bit of an angle, and you also want to make sure that they're coming in at different heights. Otherwise I thought it would look kind of strange if they are both starting in exactly the same spot, and also it gives it a little bit of a, you know, a little sloppy, sexy look to it as well. And for these thigh highs, I'm making the fishnets a little bit broader than I did for the original, just to try something a little different. And then we're gonna flip over our little lady and just draw in the thigh highs on the back. All right, so now I got out my little box of brads and we're going to attach everything together now. So first, I'm gonna just place the brad through the top layer and then through the back layer and just adhere it using my, whatever that tool is called, I can't remember offhand. And now we're going to add the back top. And the important thing here is that you're only gonna put adhesive on the top, because if you were to put it on the bottom also, then it wouldn't be able to wiggle and wag around. So you only, again, want the adhesive on the top half. And then I'm just erasing, I got some stray marks on the little lady, so I was just erasing that with an eraser. Now I'm gonna put a couple of little hearts just for a decoration on the hiney. And I'm just using my multi-medium matte adhesive to adhere the hearts. All right, so I'm just going to keep working my way through and adhere all 4 of the bows onto our little lady. And now she's done. And now I'm going to double up some foam tape and place that on her back, but only on the top portion. This is the part we're going to stick onto the front of the card, and we want her bottom to be able to wiggle back and forth. And in order to do that, we need to make sure we only put adhesive on her top. And now it's time to start working on the card base. And to do that, I have cut out a piece of pattern paper. It's 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, and I cut an oval into it. And now I'm just tracing the oval on the actual card base so that I know where to place the die cut. Okay, and there we have it. So I've die cut the oval from the front. I probably should have opened up the card before I ran it through the die cutting machine, because it also perforated part of the base, but that's okay for my purposes because I'm just going to cover it with the leftover piece of pattern paper for the inside. But if you're doing this at home, make sure that the card is open when you run it through the die cutting machine. Now I'm just going to add a piece of plastic as a window to the pattern paper, and then I'm going to adhere the whole thing to the front of the card, and that'll give us a little window so that our little lady can shake her behind when you open up the card and you know, look inside to see whatever sentiment you put in there. Okay, so our card base is prepared. Now it's time to put our little lady onto the front of the card. So I just did that, and now as you see, she's on top of the card, she's happy, and she can wiggle back and forth so that when you open up the card, you get a little surprise. So moving on to card number 2, now we're gonna make the little lady who kind of is wearing a robe, and then when you open it up, she flashes and she shows her sexy undergarments. And for this, I'm using a card base that is 80-pound weight, so you want to use a thin card base because we have a lot of layers that we're going to cut through ultimately. And for the dress, the paper that I'm using is a specialty paper by Tonic that I kind of just flashed a moment ago. They have, I don't know if you've checked them out yet, but they have a lot of really, really beautiful fabric papers, and I bought a lot of them and I haven't gotten a chance to really use them yet, so I'm excited to do so with this card. So here I'm just, I put some adhesive on the back of the fabric paper, and I'm just going to adhere it to the front of the card, both of the strips that you see here. And to finish off the front of the robe, I'm just adding a little strip of iridescent glitter paper to the two, I guess, folds in the robe where it would fold in, just to kind of give the dress a little bit of interest. And now I'm just folding down the lapel on the robe on both sides, just like you see me doing here in the picture. And then I'm going to add another strip of the iridescent glitter paper to the bottom of the lapel, just so that it looks pretty and finished. All right, and now we're going to move on to the tricky part. And honestly, this part I had a little bit of trouble with even when I was making the first card. Initially I had run this through the die machine just like you see here. So I basically just attached the lacy heart to the corner and ran it through the die machine. And other people have been trying that and they've been having trouble, so I've kind of come up with a different way that I think will be a little bit easier. And what I'm doing here, instead of running it through the die cutting machine, we're going to just cut it with scissors, but we're still going to use the edges of the heart as a guide so that we know where to cut into the paper. And this actually worked a lot better for me as well. And the other benefit of this is that if you have a fabric paper like this tonic paper that I'm using, you don't want to run it through the die cutting machine, because then it'll kind of push down all those beautiful ripples in the paper and ruin it. So if you're using a fabric paper like this, this is actually the better way to go. All right, so let's just finish cutting into the sides of our robe. And here I'm just evening out the two sides so that they're even, that they come down at the same angle. And then I'm going to round the corners of the shoulders and then around by the waist area, just so that it looks more like a woman shape and less like, I don't know, clothing that we wore in the 1980s with all the pointy edges. And then I'm going to keep the bottom of the robe flat and square, because that's basically where the robe ends, so we don't need to round that off. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Now it is time to move on to the inside and color in the skin. I'm using darker skin tones this time. I'm starting with E30 and I'm going to fill in the entire back with that, and then move on to E55 and then finish it off with E35. And for timing purposes, I had to move really quickly through this section, so forgive me, but those are the colors I used. Now it's time to move on to making her sexy undergarments. For the panties, I'm just going to cut one of the hearts in half on a slight angle, just to make the bottom half of our bra and panty set. I'm just taking the black lacy heart and I'm going to cut it down the middle so that I can make both halves of the bra top. And then I'm going to use the cheetah heart to make the cups of the bra. Okay, so there we have our bra completed, and now we are just going to adhere on the panties. And then when we're done with that, we're going to put a couple of little gold bows to finish the underwear. And I just cut the bows out of some gold foil paper that I had on hand. This again is another one of the papers from Tonic. It's a really, really beautiful gold paper. I think the first time that I used it, it was in the Mint Wishes kit by Simon Says Stamp for Christmas time. And then after that, I just bought a whole bunch of it. And I use it a lot in my projects. It's a really, really beautiful gold paper. Okay, so now the inside of our card is done, and now we're gonna move on to the final touches on the outside. First, we're going to give her a pearl necklace, and I'm using Tonic Nouveau Drops in Simply White. And I'm trying to keep the pearls spaced apart, because if they touch each other, then they'll start to run into each other and lose their shape. So that's why I did that. Now I'm just trying to add some definition to the leg area so that it looks like they're two separate legs, and I just went in with an E35 marker. And that is going to finish off the inside. And now to finish off the outside, we're just going to add a pretty black ribbon as the tie for her robe. And there we have it. We are all done.